I hope you enjoy this special episode from the Idea Citizen Summit, Burnout to Breakthrough, presented by Cohesion. Create spaces where people want to be. Learn more at cohesionib.com. Hey ladies, I wasn't planning on being on this chat, but it's a happy circumstance. And I hope that our wonderful moderator, Jay Brown, will be able to join us shortly. But until then, I'm happy to carry on with the work that all three of you have done. Kristin Graham is a brain science meets word nerd. She's spent 25 plus years leading culture and communications at global companies and launched her own business, Unlock the Brain, during COVID. Kristin is now a global speaker, strategist, and podcaster on the topic of neuroscience, psychology, and habits. Cathy Zappulla, a powerhouse strategist at the intersection of careers, business, and the future of work. A former corporate COO turned solopreneur, Cathy brings over 30 years of experience helping professionals and business leaders navigate seismic shifts in how and why we work. I'm going to hop off then. I think you're ready to go.
Thank you, ladies, for joining.
So my name is Cathy Zappulla. I was in corporate for 30 years. I live in Chicago. I am from New York, lived in DC, lived in Europe for a long time. And after 30 years in corporate, I made the decision largely as a mom to step away from corporate. I worked with a career coach. I'm now coaching people. My career coach worked with me to identify the reasons I wanted to leave corporate and the boxes that I wanted to check by leaving corporate. I'll probably work till old age, so it wasn't about slowing down. I'll work forever, so not about slowing down, just about having the flexibility to be present to raise my children. And as someone who reaches management and executive level positions, that becomes increasingly more difficult, especially at the tender age of infancy to 8, 9, 10 years old. And that's the stage when your kids really need you. And very few people in this world, regardless of what their work is, have the luxury of stepping away. So it was a blessing. I'm so happy I could do it, but it wasn't without compromise, compensation changes. I'm excited today to talk with Kristin and have Jay help facilitate this conversation so we can talk about all the reasons why we did it, some of the hiccups along the way, why corporate is not a dirty word.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Cathy.
Here's what I love. Welcome to a live panel with real talk with real tech issues, because that's the way that life goes, right?
Yes.
If it's not tech, it's my dog underfoot or something else. So that's what we're here for, is to talk about the real life side of everything. So I love it. And it's been so much fun to get to know Jay and Cathy as we've done this. And one of the words that Cathy used the other day was about the career ecosystem. I so love that, about we don't have to just be one thing. And so for me, I'm a former journalist. I thought that was going to be my path. And then I went accidentally corporate, is my joke. And it's been over 25 years there as well. And I loved corporate when I was in it because I didn't know any better. I'm first generation female to graduate from college, and just any type of steady success was what I think we were prescribed to see as the path, and just be kind of happy that you're in the lane at all. And I play a very good nerd, and I kind of show up first to the meetings. And there's this great quote by Coco Chanel that says, when you discover you have everything and it's not enough. And like Cathy, getting to become an executive, getting to get to the certain levels, everybody kind of looks around and says, well, what do you have to complain about? And then we're taught to just swallow that and to tamper it down. And I think there's physical burnout, but I think there's social and emotional burnout too. Like, where do you put any dissatisfaction? Because we are not in the privilege. So right. Underscore what Cathy's saying. And if you happen to not be happy and you have privilege, you better button up and suck up.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. My name is Jay Brown, and I am a career project manager and program manager. I fell in love with content creation about 8 years ago when I joined a global nonprofit in the cable media and technology industry. It's called WICT Network, the WICT Network. I was a part of the Southeast chapter for 7 years as a board director, and I fell in love with creating content about real topics and real issues that face women abroad, across all spectrums, no matter your age, your race, your ethnic background. I'll be hosting a podcast this fall called The Exit Interview, about just huge life pivots, the things in life that shape you or reshape you. Again, thank you guys for being here. This particular panel is about burnout to break through why individuals are leaving the corporate workspace and then going into entrepreneurship or solopreneurship and why that's happening. So give me your perspective, Kathy. Why do you think this is happening so often? How long have you seen this shift sort of happening?
Yeah. So one of the reasons I got into the future of work and became fascinated about the future of work, it sounds like something sci-fi and it's not. There's just a lot of change that's happening right now. That's why I call my business Tomorrow is Today. It is not tomorrow, it is today. But sometimes in order to kind of figure out where you are and where we all are going, we have to look backwards and we have to look historically at where we've been. And, my dad worked for IBM for his entire career. And I feel IBM was his mistress. I mean, it was his life. Felt we had was thanks to IBM. Every opportunity we had moving to Europe was part of my dad's IBM experience. But in return, you had this deep loyalty from the organization. You had a pension. You had an organization that felt like it was responsible for your family, not just the worker. IBM put my dad through school. He was an immigrant kid, the first to go to college, and started with IBM fixing computers as a laborer. And so it's that kind of typical suburban New York story of that lifelong career at a blue chip company that kind of was the American dream back then. But fast forward to the 1990s, and my dad actually was asked to retire early. That was devastating to him from an identity perspective. And there were implications to that I won't get into in this conversation, but it definitely was deeply disruptive to him as a human. And that, the 1990s, when early retirements, pensions going away, layoffs starting to become a more normal thing, then all of a sudden the landscape at work changed. And you still were expected to be this loyal corporate employee, yet you had to kind of fight tooth and nail to climb that ladder. It was much more competitive. You didn't have that job security. And so I think this kind of burnout mentality started back then. There was, and then you introduce technology and all of a sudden you're available on a Saturday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon where previously you weren't. And so, it's been this kind of accumulation of accessibility to the workforce 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, as well as the workforce feeling like they have to compete to not only climb the ladder, to retain their job. And so I think that burnout mentality has kind of been a slow burn for probably 10, 20, 30 years now. And it's become the norm. And I think what's changing, and I won't get into that part yet, the kind of where we are and where we're going, but COVID changed things. More technology like AI and automation is changing things, and generational differences, globalization. Gen Z, millennials started it, Gen Z will finish it. There's no more burnout mentality that's acceptable in the workplace. And so there's an uprising. So I think historically we can kind of understand why we got here. And now the burnout, the toxicity, the rejection that has to be our lives is in large part because of the voices of millennials and Gen Z, to be honest.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that over time, just gradually, the workforce has been asking too much of individuals. Therefore, they're leaving the corporate landscape and creating their own businesses, solopreneurships. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah. And I think, it's not just the work, but we have to take responsibility for ourselves. No one asked me to take a text at 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. Not in the job description. That was a choice. And so a lot of us make choices because we feel we need to, or we have to, or we're expected, when honestly, maybe we're not. But yes, I think the question around what is my relationship with corporate as a professional? What is the expectation? What will my happiness, joy, purpose, mental health look like in that arrangement? What will my job security look like? And I think some of the younger generations are saying it doesn't have to be so cookie cutter. It doesn't have to be a linear career path. Maybe entrepreneurship, side hustles, COVID, really triggered a lot of that. Maybe there's some, like Kristin said, more of an ecosystem that we can create so that we're not relying on corporate for our emotional, financial.
Sure, understood. Go ahead, Kristin, give me your perspective. Why do you feel that this is happening so much? When do you think this shift happened? And why is it particularly happening with women and, maybe women of color? You have to hit on the fact that her dad was an immigrant. He came here and he lived that sort of American dream of, I got a job, I worked my way up from the mailroom to the boardroom. But why is it happening now that people are leaving, though? Like, where did this shift happen and why is it happening?
I love everything that you said, Cathy, in terms of how we set it up. I would say it's just more visible and we have more of the nomenclature to put around it. I would actually argue that women have been entrepreneurial long before it was ever called that.
Sure.
We called it scrappy. We called it savvy. Even as women were entering the workforce, we still had joint responsibility for the home and for whatever we were, quote, getting paid to do. And like Cathy, my father was career military until he got out before he planned. And so in both of those cases, like my mother stepped up, but she always was behind the scenes too, right? And I was a latchkey kid, but it was who was organizing the carpools back in the day? Who was stretching the groceries when things got tight? Who was looking at the larger aspects of how do you make things work? And that side hustle that we now all have hashtags for on social media, that was happening all the time. Who didn't have somebody who could like swap clothes down the block and all of the things to make it happen? Or you became, you can sell your wares somewhere else. I think we've always been doing Scotch tape to our own ecosystem for a long time. Now, however, I think that we're having a chance to economize it on a greater scale and call it a career.
Understood. Thank you for that. So let's move on a little bit. I'd like to get into the topic so we can, impart some insight for our guests and audience members here. Tell me a little bit, ladies. Let's start with Cathy. Just within this landscape, what is a telltale sign for someone if they're experiencing burnout? What's a telltale sign for you to take some personal inventory and just get the heck out of here? Like, this isn't working.
So if you are in a corporate position, regardless of your age,
Or your
position,
Yep.
regardless of your goals or aspirations, I don't think you should wait for that bad day, that bad week, that bad moment. So I'm a huge advocate for exploring entrepreneurship. And I think sometimes when people hear the word entrepreneurship, they think that they have to have employees, they have to have a big business, they need to get investors. There are all different versions. Let's just call it generating income outside of your 9 to 5. If that's driving an Uber, if that's going and working retail on the weekends or during the holidays, if that's starting a podcast, if that's mowing lawns, I don't care. And by the way, the keeping up with the Joneses, and I have an MBA, and I would go work retail because I really believe in this ecosystem mentality. I believe all of us should not be worried about what anyone else thinks and be open-minded to generating incomes in ways that make sense for ourselves and our families, in ways that bring us value and joy and learning and really extend ourselves outside of this box. Because I think that's what the future of work calls for. So I'm not denying the fact that there are really bad moments that trigger that desire to leave corporate. That's happening. I really encourage people to be proactive because I guarantee you most people will have that moment. And why not, instead of waiting for that moment to happen, why not get ahead of it and really start embracing of this in advance?
Yeah, so just be prepared is what I'm hearing you say. Be prepared for what could happen. Don't wait for it to happen to then sort of like, have your hair on fire and like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
Be reactive. And to one last point before we switch to Kristin is that I think it's really important to understand that the heaviness, the weight of what's happening in your corporate job will be reduced if your energy is going into multiple things. All your energy is going into that one corporate job and that one boss and that one project that's due. When that project doesn't get the kudos you thought you would get from it, it's not as defeating because you're involved in other things that kind of dilute the negativity of that situation, if that makes sense.
Totally. So this particular topic, hits for me because it's just hard. I mean, it's difficult for women in general, of color in general, immigrant women in general, to make a way. You know, there are some exceptions, obviously, but on the surface level, there are a lot of people who are trying to, some just trying to stay on top, some are trying to get ahead. And there's a lot of forces against you. And especially these days where I think one of you ladies discussed where things are being automated. So jobs are being eliminated. So for me, there's always a sense to always be inauthentic, right? Sort of always sit back and wait my turn or literally stay in my place. Those are the things that I discovered. There's a lot of working a little too hard to just be basic when everyone else fails upward. So I get burnt out in that way. And there's a sense in me of this is so unfair, like why, I don't understand, but being unfair or not, it's still a thing, that's still the way that the business actually operates in this day and time. I will say that I've had times in my life where it wasn't like this, where much like Cathy mentioned, with the opportunity with her dad, where I did have people that took me under their wing. They did make way for me, but those days, in my opinion, they're gone. They're absolutely gone. I was speaking to a VP last Friday. He is one of my old bosses, my actual favorite boss of all time. Like no one will ever match Bob Murphy. Everyone's, distant second, but he even admitted the same. He said that those days are kind of over where bosses are more people-centric. Now it's about the numbers. So that's my take, and that's my personal experience and why burnout threw me out the door. And I'm looking towards freelancing to be an entrepreneur, just to be safe, just much like Cathy said, just to know that like my energy is going into how I'm going to take care of myself, and I love it, and it's working for me. So, Kristin, in your opinion, give me your why people are seeing signs or not seeing signs, and what those are, and what they should listen to when they see those signs to either get out or move direction.
Several topics here. The first, in terms of what to listen to,
Yeah.
you already feel it. You feel it in your gut. You feel it in your head. You feel it every Sunday when you don't want to go do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many people, super, super talented people, end up taking a leave of absence and feel broken and feel like the only way that they can take time off is to claim some physical ailment so that they can breathe. And there are so many signals that happen before then. I think because we come from this place of it's not safe to say that we're not doing okay. So that's one of the core things that we need to really look at. If you're even listening to this right now or on record, there's a reason your brain put you here today, and there's signals all around us. So that's one. Two, we think that we have to be ready with a capital R. We think we have to be perfect. We think we should listen to one more audiobook, get one more certification, or we skip over the scrappy step. And a lot of that comes from, we need to build up our confidence before there's currency involved, before I send an invoice. And some of it comes from just doing it gratis, getting out there and practicing. And I've spoke for free so many times before I ever got a paycheck for it. And it's those sea legs aspect. And it's that practice, that messiness when we start. Mm-hmm. But I want to go back to what you said too, Jay, because Cathy and I are sitting here as white women and saying, hey, we got to take this leap. I don't ever want to skip over the fact that being a woman has its innate challenges. One of the core things that is needed is sponsorship and making room. Sometimes I spoke for free because I was a tag along, a gift with purchase to somebody else who brought me up. And so we have an obligation to send the elevator back down.
I love that.
For anybody starting too, right? It's not just a gender element,
Sure.
But there is no limited slices of the pie. There's, having been there, plenty of room at the top. That's a secret that nobody knows. And so we keep thinking, well, if we can share the spotlight, because it only makes it better for us. This network, this sponsorship, this communication and community right here, that's the real gold.
I love that. Thank you for that. And thank you for acknowledging too that, there is challenges for women of different backgrounds, because there is,
It is.
Surely there are challenges for women as a whole. That's why there are women, networks, and there are women organizations. I mean, they were created because women didn't have a seat at the table, so they had to make one. They had to pull their own chair up. Yes. But there are, challenges for women who are othered as well, which, I certainly fit into that bucket. But let's move on a little bit here. I'd like to talk about future-proofing career and business. Kathy did hit on that a little bit. Do what you got to do what you love, just to make sure that your energy's aligned and you're centered and balanced and you're not, scrambling when you need to. Rather, you're prepared because you already had those, your passive income or your side hustle, if you will, in line prior to having to find one. So tell me a little bit, ladies, about future proofing. Kathy, I'm going to start with you. I think you're the future proof guru here. What skills do you believe, though, that are most valuable for a successful career reinvention or shift? For this day and age. Let's talk about now.
Right.
Like, what skill do you think that individuals need right now to future proof or to prepare for that pivot?
Okay, well, the obvious answer is AI, but it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Sure.
What I realized, so maybe I'll back up just slightly. So when I left corporate, I got into recruiting. Recruiting is a great career for someone who really values talent, who really likes helping an organization attract the right people.
Sure.
And it's tremendously flexible. It allowed me to be very present for my kids and work when I needed to work. However, having been in corporate for 30 years, recruiting for me just wasn't enough intellectual stimulation. I really wanted to engage. I wanted to help people beyond that. And so during these conversations with candidates and clients, we're having the same conversation. Honest to God, it could have been 1975. I mean, it's the same resume, the same interview prep, the same questions. It really is a space that is as traditional in many ways as it was 30 or even 40 years ago. And so I'm having these conversations, and at the same time I'm having these conversations, I'm watching, I'm reading, I'm engaging, I'm learning, I'm asking, and I'm seeing not just AI. I think AI becoming mainstream just over a year and a half ago, because AI has been around for 40 years, but it became mainstream, a year and a half ago or so. But I'm seeing not just that, but I'm seeing hybrid and virtual and asynchronous work and distributed work. I am seeing globalization. I'm seeing that I'm having conversations whenever I want to with someone in Germany or Bangladesh or anywhere in the world at any time of day. And all of a sudden I have access to people all over the world, just like hiring managers do. I'm also seeing business disruptions, global pandemics, wildfires, all these different things all over the world that are creating real business disruptions. More recently, you have supply chain disruptions.
Yes.
Geopolitical situations that are happening. And so this kind of combination, and the list goes on, by the way, that's not everything, believe it or not.
Sure.
To it. And so I'm having these very traditional conversations while I'm watching the whole entire world of work get turned upside down on its head. And I'm saying to myself, when are these two things going to collide? Because it's going to happen. And so that's when I decided to really get deep in the future of workspace. It is not sci-fi. AI is not some distant, situation that'll affect people 20 years from now and they don't have to worry about it. I am completely having to reinvent what my kids' education looks like and what their career track will look like. Will they even go to college? What once was a non-negotiable, we didn't even discuss it in my house. My dad had the luxury to go. Of course, my brother and I were going to college. It wasn't even a discussion. Regardless of how we figured out we'd pay for it, we'd figure it out. It was a non-negotiable in my household.
Let me sorry.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. But tell me sort of like in layman's terms, how you feel AI is beneficial to individuals who are wanting to future-proof. Let's get there.
So if you kind of understand what's happening around us and realize how fast things are changing and the pace of change, college grads, I think it's almost 6% are unemployed, recent college grads. So that whole bottom rung is changing. The reason why AI is important is because in the short term, in the next 5 to 10 years, people keep saying AI is not going to take your job. But if you don't know AI, that's where you'll be at risk. So It's not that AI will take it, but if you don't know how to use AI, then your job is at risk. I think that's probably true for the next 3 to 5 years max.
Understood.
I think beyond that, we don't know. Learning AI is critical. And if you work in an organization and you say, oh, we use this software and there's AI built into it, that's not learning AI.
Okay.
So learning AI, embracing it, learning the major apps, starting with ChatGPT, if that's where you want to start. I use it probably 50 to 75 times a day. I use it for everything, for personal, for parenting, for work, for helping me with presentations, for helping me with content. It is my wingman. I use it
Sure.
all day, every day.
I love that.
I think total immersion is probably the best and the easiest way to just start becoming familiar with it. But a couple of other quick things: communication, how you're communicating with people in a virtual environment is different than
Sure.
how you communicate with people in a live environment.
Sure.
I think that understanding how to motivate, which goes back to the original part of our discussion, how do you really manage people in an age of transformation and automation and technology? It's about empathy. It's about mental health. It's about connecting with your employees. It's about having a more personal relationship, and leadership, kind of what leadership looks like, has really changed. So
Yes.
there's probably, 8 or 10 major things you can do to future-proof your career, but AI absolutely is numero uno.
First step.
Yeah.
Understood. Gotcha. Kristen, give me your perspective. And then we'll then answer a couple of questions, actually. A few questions came in to the chat.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Of course, I echo everything that Cathy was saying. Here's something too that I find, because AI is like this huge umbrella. One of the things that I find is that it's a shortcut to how you can amplify your core skill sets. Like Cathy mentioned, you can really customize it, whichever platform, Claude or Chat, that you decide to use. One of the things I've seen a lot of people do, and I know one of the questions is going to be here about how you can start from college, when you're like, how can I promote myself when I have no experience? We all have skill sets. We all have interests. And so I was talking to somebody this morning, and she said, I ended up giving my entire resume to her AI platform and said, now ask me a bunch of questions. So it did. That's fascinating if you haven't done that. Say, get to know me, ask me questions about skill sets, interests, etc. And then it came back and she said, now what could my personal brand be? So if you're trying to do a side gig, what could my professional course skill sets be? And that's where she found out, oh, I never even would have thought to put the words personal branding. Because when we look back on a career, we're like, I worked at this company and this company and this company. And when you're starting out, you're like, I have no experience. Both of those aren't true. We're not a collection of classes we took or job descriptions we were hired into. We are an output of the results that we had, the interests that we found, the people we connected with. And so when you have a tool, especially one, let's talk about the psychology of humble bragging. Whether you want to do a side gig, whether you're interviewing for a job, whether you're going on a date, it is hard to figure out how to talk about yourself. And so one of the things in having a platform, a neutral platform, is that you can have conversations and accept words, because it's not, we don't have to downplay it. Oh, no, I'm not really that great at it. I just had a good manager. But if it's a machine, you can be like, maybe I am a badass, say more. And we can start to normalize, I love that word, Cathy, right? With ask me some more questions. Tell me some ways that I can brand myself. Tell me how I can rewrite my LinkedIn header. So there's a lot of ways that it could tell me how to say no to my friends because I don't want to go to that party. I use it for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I just recorded a podcast last week about how to use AI as your shortcut tool, like Cathy. And there's a lot that it just allows you to have space for thinking with an additional ecosystem, but without all the human psychology that blocks us from accepting words or branding ourselves. So I would definitely say try it that way.
Sure.
It's so hard to read the label when we're inside our own bottle.
Sure.
Have something else reflect you back to you.
Understood. Thank you for that. I'm going to jump to a question to kind of like put us back into the middle and the meat and the marrow of this conversation. This is a great question, actually, that even myself, I'm interested in wanting to know the answer to. What are the first steps in transitioning from a corporate job to your, it said here your side gig, but let's call it a passive income. Let's call it a freelance work. Let's call it another stream of income. What are the first steps to take to do that? Cathy, let me start with you again.
Okay, so a couple of things. I think that your network, let me put it this way, and I think this might be helpful. Nephew just graduated from Georgia Tech with a degree in engineering. I'm going to see him this weekend.
Yay, Georgia Tech.
Yay, Georgia Tech.
Georgia, right?
He has no idea we're going to have this conversation, but we're having this conversation when I get there. So here are the things that I would recommend to him. One, start building your network. I don't care if you're 22 or 62, your network is gold. My network would be 50 times the size that it is if I took it as seriously at 22 as I do now. Your network is everything. Networking is huge. Two, make sure you take advantage of everything your company has to offer, especially if it relates to building a transitional role, side gig, or entrepreneurship down the road. What does that mean? Take classes. If your company says they're going to cover the cost of classes, take the classes on the company's dime. Go to conferences. Some of these things you're checking a lot of boxes. You're networking and you're learning and you're getting ideas about your new business. So taking advantage of everything that the company has to offer is huge. Having some amount of self-discovery. What are you good at? What were you doing when you were 5 years old that your parents couldn't get you to stop doing? What brings you joy? What brings you purpose? So when you're thinking about that transition to a side gig or entrepreneurship, they always say that a good business idea is finding the pain and solving a problem rather than following your purpose. I think it's some combination of the two. I think that if you can find what inherently is something you're good at and you care about and you feel like you can monetize, then it's important to combine that with, okay, but then what problem are you trying to solve? I think having a business plan, I think just winging it is probably not the best idea in the world.
Concur.
Doing a business plan, figuring out, do you need to set up, an LLC or some form of structure so that you're protecting yourself? A lot of these things you can get out of ChatGPT. I would ask ChatGPT. I would say, I'm interested in this. Ask me up to 20 questions. Here's where I live. Here's how much I want to make off of this business. Give me a business plan or an action plan on how to make this happen. And it's going to spit out the whole thing for you. But what it won't necessarily tell you is the importance of networking, the importance of business planning, the importance of understanding your market, who else is doing it, why are they doing it, what are you going to do differently from them, and then also building your personal brand. These are all things, whether you stay in corporate and think you might want to do a side hustle or go off on your own someday, or if you're going full-fledged, your personal brand is huge. Again, whether you're 22 or 62 or 72, if you are not getting who you are, what you're good at, why you're good at it out there for people to see, it's going to be a steep climb. You can start with LinkedIn. That's a great place to start, to really have it be your digital business card and show who you are, where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go. Your personal brand is huge.
Thank you. I love that. I love the whole personal branding and, trying to figure out who you are. I will say this. I did this recently. I actually used ChatGPT to craft a review, a business review and a job review on myself. And I called about 5 or set meetings with 5 of my most, I would say, valued and trusted advisors in my personal life who also worked with. And I had them give me a soup to bones. Is it soup to bones or soup to nuts? Whatever. You know what I'm saying? Soup to nuts.
Soup to nuts.
Give me the good stuff, but also please give me the bad stuff. Give me the stuff that I need improvement on. Give me an assessment of my background, what I'm good at, and what you think I need improving on. It was the best thing I ever did. So I really appreciate you saying that. I think you should actually do the work. If you can't do the inventory yourself, ask someone. Ask someone who knows you better than you know yourself. So that's something I want to,
It's so interesting you say that, Jay, because I've said this to candidates before when they're working on their resume. Go talk to 3 people who know you really well in the workplace setting and ask them about you, because they're going to tell you more about you than you can tell yourself. And they're going to notice things you don't even notice
you
yourself.
never notice.
You need to build in your personal brand. That's huge.
But you also have to be open for the truth, because no one is wanting to hurt you. They're wanting to help you. So you have to take the constructive feedback as that. And ask,
Well,
a
a personal brand is what people say when you leave the room.
correct, right? And you also want those same people to speak your name when they're in a room of influence. So you going to them and being vulnerable in that way, it really sets you up for success. So I really appreciate you mentioning that, and I can impart my own personal experience and how I, that works for me. I'm going to let you go ahead, Kristin, and give me your perspective on the same, what's the first step? How do we get out of this thing?
Two things, again, adding to what Cathy already said, I do brain science and habits. There's 1,000 other people who do that too. So you do not need to be unique. You just need to be you. Anybody can read the books, watch the YouTube channel, etc. They're going to come to you because of how you make your designs, how you do whatever your talent is. Don't worry about having some special niche. People get too excited about that. Lean into who you are, because that's a differentiator that gets you paid. The second thing I would say is barter. In the beginning, when people don't necessarily have budgets or they're not sure of what you're doing, go out there and say, hey, how about if I come do a training at your local chapter of this, and then would you be willing to give me a testimonial for that?
Fantastic.
Not all currency is in money. It goes back to what Cathy said about the network, about sponsorship, but that matters because then later I can say, oh yes, I have spoken at chapter events, and here's the testimonial from Cathy when I did it for her. People don't need to know that you did that for free, because the experience is where the value was. So don't ever forget to kind of ask for that and to swap. I think
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm going to add to that. I am a firm believer in that because, again, I was on the board of a nonprofit for 8 years. People think it's like, ooh, so fantastic, which it is. It's absolutely fantastic. I don't want to
I was too.
diminish that. However, the title was what excited people more than the fact that I didn't get paid for that. I didn't get paid monetarily for that. But what I did get paid in is experience and confidence and a strong network. So I totally concur with what you're saying. I'm going to run to the next question really quick, and I'm going to answer a part of it first. And then, Kristin, because I cut you off, I'm going to let you start and then go to Cathy.
Yeah, go.
But the next question is, what step can college students take to set themselves up for success in a corporate career or their own venture? I just said it. Join a nonprofit. And Cathy mentioned it as well. You got to get yourself out there to network. The best networking is to be on the board of or involved with a nonprofit. You're going to meet a lot of people who are on executive levels that you would never have access to otherwise. Not in your regular job, not in the seat next to you in an airplane, nowhere. So, that's a great way to set yourself up for success. Start networking, much like Cathy said, early. And this is your gateway into networking. It is typically free, and you will find your passion when you join a nonprofit. You will find what you're good at. And if you don't find it personally, someone's going to tell you. I didn't realize that I was good at executing things. Someone told me. So I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, my ADD and my structured brain and my, like those things are coming to my advantage because that is what I'm good at. Let me roll to you, Kristin. What are some things a college student can do to set themselves up for success heading into the corporate sector or, starting their own business venture?
I love this question. I have 2 boys that are in college and I speak at colleges and universities a lot. The first thing that I would say is hit up the alumni networks. There is an affinity for anyone. And I realize we're having this conversation about those who have been educated in a degreed setting. So there's others who are starting without that. So respecting that. There is such an affinity for where people went to undergrad or grad school. And I'm sure Cathy and Jay have the same. I get a lot of outreach on LinkedIn and an email that's just, it feels spammy. But if somebody said, hey, I'm also a graduate of, you immediately have my attention. And there's always this hesitance of like, they're so busy or they're a vice president. I don't want to bother. Use your alumni or even just your state. It's just say, hey, I just graduated from wherever. I see that you also went to school in Illinois. I'm starting my career. So few people ask for informationals and that aren't selling you something. And if you have that eagerness, you're starting to learn, and I'm sure Cathy will agree, we would be happy, delighted even to take 15 to 30 minutes to have virtual coffee or real coffee. Use your alumni or use your association with that 100%. So I think that that's a huge component to set yourself apart because we actually want to talk to you. Cathy, what would you add?
I do think I just want to reinforce this again. AI, the skills, we're moving into skills-based hiring. Diplomas don't carry the same weight as they used to. There are real skills, some of which are in the technology space, some of which are not, that are necessary to succeed in this new world of work. So I think, being prepared for what the new world of work will look like and becoming agile so you can kind of flow through this new landscape. I think having a mentor is incredibly important. And I want to say that a mentor doesn't even need to be someone you know. If there's someone in your organization, Michael Jordan is a mentor to lots of people, and who actually has met him or knows him. It's someone aspirational, someone who's doing what you want to do or being like you want to be, and you want to follow it. So you watch, you you learn, you read from that person. I think a lot of people feel like a mentor has to be someone you work for in your organization. I think it's also mentor by committee. There's no such thing anymore as one mentor. It should be mentor by committee. Maybe you do have someone who's aspirational, you don't have a relationship with, and that's someone you consider a mentor. But maybe you also have someone who's in your organization who is an incredible speaker and you want to be a great speaker someday. And maybe they're in a different department, but they're a great speaker and that's the link that connects you. So having, a committee of mentors, I think is really important.
I'm going to jump in really quickly, Kristin, before you go. And also, ladies, we have 5 minutes, so we're going to have to wrap really quickly. I do concur about having a mentor. Also, I want to take it away from the corporate aspects. Anybody can have a mentor. I don't care what job, what industry you're in, what your age is. It could be 22 or it could be 92. Everybody can reach out to get a mentor. I do also concur that maybe it's not the best idea to have someone within your organization be your mentor. They're going to impart on you what they want, in my opinion, what they want you to learn for their benefit, because you're within their organization. I think it's best to find someone outside of your organization who's going to give you that, fettered sort of like feedback to where they have no skin in the game. They're just trying to help you. So I feel that having many mentors is great, but I'm particularly against a mentor within your organization. Also, and lastly, person, you're right. Ask anybody. People are so wanting to help you. It doesn't matter if they're in your state or went to your school. If you ask someone, they're like, oh my gosh, they're honored that you even chose them to shadow and to learn from. So always ask. The worst someone's going to say is no. But then again, you never had them to begin with.
Exactly.
The next guy. Do you know what I mean? So I do feel having a mentor is great. Please don't, think that it's only a corporate thing. It's definitely whatever your industry is. Please, find a mentor. And it doesn't have to be structured. Mentoring doesn't have to be structured. Darn. I spoke about Bob Murphy, my favorite boss of all time. Send him a DM. Hey, Bob, what are you doing? I got 30 minutes to talk to me. This is what I want to talk about. He's so appreciative. He's so open. He's so available. And he'll tell me what I need to hear, not necessarily what I want to hear. Well, let me just say that. Yes. He's a very straight shooter, but he does it very well. That's why I always go back. So, Kristin, give me your perspective on I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm on my own tangent. Go ahead and give me a perspective on what a college student can do to put themselves in their career or.
Perfect. I was going to give a suggestion based on what Cathy just said about how to use AI for something just like this. Let's say her nephew's graduating from Georgia Tech. You can go on to LinkedIn and do a whole search of tell me anybody who's an alumni from Georgia Tech. Yes. And you can even do it by industry. That's a great way. They do not have to be anybody that you know. That's a fantastic way to get out there. Or you can go to AI and say, tell me who is in finance, who are also an alumni of Georgia Tech, who also live in Illinois. And that's where AI gets to be your shortcut more than you just doing your own Google searching. The other thing I would say about mentors who you don't necessarily know is if they are content creators, and a lot of people are, so you're either following them on a channel or let's say LinkedIn, start commenting on their content. I will tell you so I've been a podcaster for a long time. I do a lot of content online. I speak from stages. You'd be surprised how quiet it is when you're visible. Sure, you get likes and things, but they will pay attention to who is a regular conversationalist with them, not just like, good job. And over time, just show that you're listening. And then later you can then ask them different questions, or they will really get to know you, or they'll at least remember your name. So start having conversations with people in a visible place because you're helping their brand. Because when you put content out there, it matters that somebody's responding and it will make you stand out.
That's a great point. I appreciate that. Definitely people are putting content out to enrich the lives of others and to help others. Not hearing anything back is like just being in the silo.
Crickets. It's crickets.
It is. Okay. So ladies, unfortunately we've run out of time, but I do want you ladies to please, if you will, give one bit of honest advice that you can give our viewers today, whether they're on with us now or going to be joining us later on watching this on record. Please give them one piece of honest advice that they can do to, if they're on the fence of making that shift in their career, what's one piece of honest advice that they can have to just take the leap? Kristin, go ahead.
Well, my favorite quote is leap and a net will appear. You got to have this scary. Confidence only comes when you see evidence. It's going to be scary. And that's when you should absolutely do it. You can, Cathy and I said this, you can always go back to a traditional thing. You will never, ever regret trying.
Go ahead, Cathy.
And I think to what Kristin just said, I don't feel it's an either or. I feel like it's an and, A-N-D. Corporate and something else. Sometimes it might just be corporate. Sometimes it might be that other thing. Sometimes it might be both. And so I think just changing your perspective on what work really looks like is the most important thing.
From my perspective here, someone mentioned Michael Jordan earlier. So I'm going to make it a sports analogy. I shouldn't be making a sports analogy because that's not my sport. I ventured off on a couple of fun things that I thought that I would be great at, and I failed. But it's all right. Like, I learned from it. But also just do it. Like, if you feel, again, I'm going to piggyback off of something Kristin said here, that, you know, if you feel in your gut that something's wrong, just do it. Just make the leap. You don't have to leave. Start, you know, planting those seeds of how I'm going to, you know, sort of like make my exit strategy. Again, my podcast is called The Exit Interview. But
seriously, Jay, though, because we're wrapping up, for anyone who's still on, the first thing you should do is link in with the three of us. I mean, that is the first thing you should do,
yes,
because we're here to answer more questions outside of this discussion.
Yes.
And I mean, you should be linking in with everybody you meet, everybody you hear. It should be your instinct. Next step, link in with them.
Yes, I do feel that taking the leap is the best thing to do. Come on to LinkedIn and start connecting with people. Don't be afraid. You got to believe in yourself because it starts with you.